And we talked about the larger global perspective where women, places like Nigeria, Boko Haram, these young girls just disappear. Women are killed in these honor killings. And, all these rules are set by men, right? Women don't have a voice. And in this country, women did not have a voice. But you and I talked up there. We were kind of segueing into the psychology of the female. And you find some really gold that allow themselves to be abused. Like we were talking about, I guess the psychology of the prostitute who would sell her body and give the money to some man. All he offers her is abuse. Why do you suppose a woman would accept that?
I think that when it comes to these toxic relationships, it's multifaceted. It could be a host of reasons why a woman would allow a man to take her money. She could go do the work and then relinquish the money
right
to a male figure. But we always have to go back to, in psychology, we always talk about the etiology, right? Which is the root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the cause, right? So we always have to go back to the family dynamic. And we talked about that the last time. We touched on that, about how we have broken women raising women, right?
Right.
And then they produce another generation of broken women, right? Or we have broken and toxic men raising to be broken and toxic men.
Mm-hmm.
It's perpetuated, right? So if you're in a toxic environment as a child and you grow up, that toxic environment, that's normalcy to you.
Right.
Now you come out into the world, you're not looking for something better. You're looking to emulate what you come from. It takes somebody to reach a place of growth for them to say, you know what? Maybe that wasn't right for dad to beat on mom. Maybe that wasn't right.
Right.
You have to reach a place of growth. So I think first and foremost, why women allow these toxic relationships, such as the dynamic between a prostitute and her pimp, would first stem from childhood. We always have to look at that. Don't you agree?
I do. I think for a lot of women, the fact that they don't have or don't develop a bond with their father. Typically, the father is the first.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is a healthy relationship at home between husband and wife, father and daughter, you would hope, and I guess statistically, it is less likely for her to find herself in a toxic relationship because she's seen a healthy relationship and understands the dynamic. And I guess these women are more confident and have a better understanding of what it is they want from a relationship. But it seems that so many women don't really have a good idea of what it is they expect. Because there's so many women that, we talked about this the other day where, build a bear, so many women trying to build a man, right? It's like Frankenstein monster. Well, let me give him some personality that I read in this book and, some etiquette from this book. Why it doesn't work. The brother has to have some stability of his own, some upbringing of his own in order to bring something to the table.
I just had this conversation with someone the other day. My dad, as a teenage girl, I think I was about 14, right? 13 or 14. And my parents weren't together. They were separated, divorced. But my dad came and picked me up one day. He called me and said, I want you to be ready at 4 or 5. Picked me up in this fancy car. He had flowers, get dressed. He took me out. I don't know. You remember the restaurant Beefsteak Charlie's?
Oh, sure.
Right. I'm old.
You ain't that old.
But we went down to Beefsteak Charlie's. The flowers. He gave me this beautiful little necklace. We went to the movies, right? We did that like this whole evening. And then on the way home, what my father said to me was, I want you to remember tonight because that's always the way that you're supposed to be treated. So he actually gave me, I didn't value it then,
Mm-hmm.
but then, fast forward, right? He gave me something to emulate, to say, this is how a man should treat me, right?
Right.
I'm the prize, not an egotistical prize, right? But the prize. And unless somebody kind of cultivates that in a woman, she doesn't have that.
Okay, realistically, I think our concept in relationships have changed. Now, a lot of guys think they are the prize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is because the situation is so desperate right now. I think that so many changes nowadays you find so many young men who are part of the LGBTQ community who are not interested in a normal or average heterosexual relationship. Just not. And in this country, we incarcerate more people, have more people on probation or parole than any 5 industrial nations combined. For a woman, particularly, I guess, women of color, it is, I guess, particularly difficult to find a suitable mate. So I guess what happens over time, women begin to lower their standards, lower their expectations, right? You know, I guess, and of course, I've never been a woman, so I guess I have to lean on you for this. But I would think that young women start out with the belief, we live in a fantasy society where, okay, well, when I'm ready to start dating, this guy will swoop in, you know, horse-drawn carriage, and he'll swoop me off my feet, and we'll go to Never Never Land, and we'll live happily ever after, right? And we'll have a big house with the white picket fence and 2.3 children and a dog. But the reality is, a lot of times, it's a small apartment, right? And maybe the dog is a cat.
Mm.
Maybe the cat is chasing the rats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your expectations, diminish, or you lower them, over time, and you begin to accept the guy that normally you wouldn't give the time of day.
I think that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the mistake is that you should be fine-tuning your insight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fine-tuning your vision versus lowering your standards, right? So just coming to terms with the fact that this is not a fairy tale, right?
Right.
And you probably won't get the castle.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's gonna come sweep you up off your feet, right? He may want to.
Right.
He may not even be able to lift you. But
right.
But he may be an amazing man, right? So we lower standards. We need to just fine tune our vision. Now, what happens is, and I'm sure you could chime in on this part. I hear people talk about the ratio of black men to black women.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big gap.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I think now in our culture, people are looking at different ways to establish relationships. Right?
Absolutely.
And so I would imagine that when you say women are lowering their standards, population of people that would probably say that even exploring different is probably lowering standards. Or if we look at the church's perspective, right, the church would say, oh my God, like you just completely going outside of God, right? But in fact, people are assimilating, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're assimilating to what we have going on in our society now. So, but again, we should never be lowering standards. We should just be fine tuning the vision.
I kind of like the way you put that, fine tuning the vision. But now, in the 21st century, and in this country, Black women are now the most educated group in this country, statistically, right?
Mhm.
So now we've established the fact that men are greatly responsible for the traumatic experiences that women have suffered,
Mhm.
right? And we have to throw in there the emotional damage and baggage that comes along with that.
Mhm.
But now in the 21st century, right? Who do you think? Okay, now just saying men are going to take responsibility for the damage that, we've done. All right. Who do you think is more responsible right now in the 21st century for dealing with, and I don't want to make this us against them because it's not, right? This is a situation that we collectively are dealing with, right? One of the problems that we have had as Black people is constant separation. We separate, right? We don't know our family. We don't know our culture. We don't know our history. Now we don't know our women, right? We have been separated. It's something we have to get back together, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, for women, I think women just need to be more selective. I think women just need to be more open to saying no, to rejecting the advances of the brother that is only going to bring you heartache. And what happens is when you decide to try to, be and put together a man, right? And 5-10 years down the road, and you realize, I've been with this man for 10 years of my life and I have nothing to show for it. And it's not just the material things. I'm dying inside, right? So when you finally decide to leave him and move on, and a brother comes along who comes from a nuclear family, who saw a healthy relationship, who's looking for a healthy, loving relationship, that sister's closed off to him.
Well, she's closed off, and a lot of women are not going to want to hear me say this. They're just not. Okay.
So let's say,
But we come out of relationships, right? And what should happen with a relationship initially is you need to take a minute. Like, you need to say, okay, I'm on timeout, right? And you need to do some self-introspection, right? You need to look at what was, what is, right? What you see for the future, right? And you need to take some time to heal, because if you come in a toxic relationship, 9 times out of 10, you're coming out because you knew it was toxic, right? So if you can identify the toxicity in the relationship, then you should be able to identify that I need a minute to regroup from this, right? So that I can, number one, see what's in front of me. Number two, be ready to deal with someone who hopefully is coming to the table healthy, emotionally healthy, right? But if you haven't taken that moment, you're not ready. So that you have to take a moment to regroup. And I used to tell women in the women's group, to them, sometimes you have to take the pillow, right? And you have to put the pillow in between your knees at night, and you have to lay and you have to rock it out. You have to do whatever you need to do to get you to that next place in your healing, right? So you're ready to go forward. You can't just relationship carrying 5 duffel bags, and you got and you got a big, what they call those big giant suitcases on wheels. You're lugging that and 5 other carry-ons because you've been in this 10-year toxic relationship. Trust me, there's baggage.
Okay, but now you say a healing process, right? Which is difficult in the world we live in our society is difficult. But now, if you've been in a toxic relationship and now you're out and now you've taken some time, will you be able to recognize a brother and not see him through the same lens as you see the guy before and the guy before him? Because a lot of times what happens is you develop habits from the people you encounter, right? So now what happens is anytime you see something that reminds you, you go on a defense, right? This brother, he has no intention of hurting you. But because you've been hurt before, it's like the boxer. You want to keep your guard up, right?
But you know, Ron,
yeah, go ahead.
What about the men and the women that's conditioned for abuse? Because that leads right into what you're saying.
And that's the heart of what we're getting at, right? After so long, right? You're keeping that guard up. Become conditioned to always keep your guard up. And here's the thing. Women are usually taught by their mothers, don't you trust no man. Don't you rely on no man to take care of you, right? You make sure you have your bank account. You make sure you know what's in your account, right? You make sure that if this relationship doesn't work, that you can come out and you can move on and provide for yourself. So we go to relationships with baggage that we're carrying from upbringing, right? Because mama might have been involved with a man who just wasn't up to snuff. So don't you trust that man? Don't you let that man know everything? Don't you give yourself to that man 100%?
I really wholeheartedly believe that it has to be a collaborative effort, right? So one, she needs to take the time to heal, right? She needs to, and a lot of people in our culture are not going to want to hear it, but therapy is your friend. Therapy is your friend. So you need to take that time to maybe go to therapy. Men, if your intentions are really good, pure, honest, right, toward a woman, then what should happen is you should be able to identify the hurt in all things that you mentioned. She's exhibiting and she put the wall up and she's not letting him in. He should be able to identify that. And then guess what should happen? This is the only way our culture is going to heal in totality. He has to speak to that hurt.
But you know something? And I've been in a situation with someone I was dating many, and you get tired of trying to break down that wall. I've had a woman tell me that you're just too nice. I don't understand that mentality of how can a person be too nice? When you deal with that, that is somebody who is conditioned, right? Because you haven't been treated like a lady. The door for you. No one's opened the car door for you. So it's a strange feeling for you, right? A lot of times, things that you might do normally, just instinctively, women begin to think, he wants something. What does he want? Nobody opens the door for anybody. Well, yeah, that does happen. That is the way it is supposed to happen, right? But if you've never had that and now somebody's doing it, you're not really comfortable with that.
But we have to start somewhere, right?
That's true.
We have to start somewhere. We have to say, I'm going to make a commitment, women. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to speak specifically to our culture, to women of color, Latino women, Black women. Let me just say, women are women. They winning.
Right.
Okay. They're winning. Okay. Our men, they're looking at the Latino women. So we need to it's time for us to step up our game, so to speak. Because they're winning. Okay. So this is the word. So the Latino women are winning.
And the white women too.
And the white women too. There you go, Terry. So they are winning. So we have to make a decision and say, I'm going to make a commitment to this process so that we can begin to heal our culture in totality. The men have to make a commitment to tap into that masculine energy, right? Because a lot of them don't even have, to be honest. They could have very good intentions, but they don't have that true masculine energy. I had pulled it up today. Like, what are the characteristics of masculine energy, right? It's to protect, it's survival, it's all the things, all the characteristics that make up this man. And then the women, nurturers, they're intuitive, like all these things that women are supposed to be. Make a commitment, us collectively as a people, make a commitment to get to know what we need to do. Where do we need to, what areas do we need to tweak? Where do we need to heal my woman, right? What do I need to give my daughter, right? Fathers, what do I need to give my daughter? Mothers, what do I need to give my sons? Because I'm a firm believer, 2 sons. I taught my sons how to treat me. And in turn, my oldest son is now married. He's a great husband. I watch how he treats his wife. I take credit. Because we teach a man how to treat a woman. A mom teaches him that.
Right.
So we have to make a commitment to say, we're going to work on us collectively as a people, right? And stop allowing this thing to perpetuate itself after generation, right? Make a decision that if I'm really feeling this lady, right, instead of me just giving up, I'm going to keep having these conversations with her until I break down the wall, right? What conversations do we need to have? Maybe she just needs to be reassured. Maybe she needs to know that I'm not leaving. Maybe it's a test.
That's all possibilities, because people will test you. And with that said, we're going to open up the phone lines. The number here is 888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401. Call if you have any questions for Roman.
Why for me?
So, yeah, you were saying about testing, right? And I think that's something all women do. I think it's something that females do, right? Females of every species will test the male because the idea is, in the wild, male will produce weak offspring, cannot survive. So in our society, we want to be assured that this man is going to protect me. If something happens, I need to feel protected. I need to feel safe.
Okay, now, again, some women are not going to agree with me.
Right.
But if you want to take on and assume this role where you want to know that this man is going to protect you, do you think at some point that you have to surrender to like the softer side of Sears, right? You can't take on masculine energy with a masculine being, right? And then expect him to be able to protect you, right? You have to decide.
You know something? You're right. There were warrior queens, African warrior queens, warriors, females of all skin tones, right? That led. But, there's an old commercial we said, I can bring home the bacon fried up in the pan and never let you forget you're a man. Right. So, you can have strength, right? But it doesn't have to lead to a clash. A lot of times guys are aggressive by nature. So when you come up against a guy, right, testosterone, right, clashing, okay, you don't want to go home to your woman, right, and she coming at you like, whoa, where you get this testosterone from? Like, let's take it down, So I get what you're saying, right? I know that women have for many years.
That's why other women win.
Hello, bingo.
I know that women have for years had to play dual roles, mama, daddy. right? So I think what happens is over time, a lot of women said, well, what do we need these guys for? Right? Um, then we can do bad on our own, get educated on our own. So sisters are climbing the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, is it a lonely climb?
Mm.
Because if you think about it, the universe created everything in pairs, right? But for us people, it is so difficult for us to get together because we have so many issues, so much baggage we're bringing, so many psychological and emotional issues that we have from our history and our past. We keep trying to find the right person, but we're not right with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We wonder why it's not working so well. We have this ongoing battle with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're battling with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, we're not sitting and doing the work. We're not doing self-introspection. We're not sitting and saying, okay, this is who I am, this is where I am, this is what I want, right? Or even to say, I don't know what I want. Because at least if you reach a place where you don't know what you want and you can verbalize that, then you're gonna do what? You're gonna start to work on trying to get to know what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Terry said something that's so important. He said that's why they're winning. They're winning because other cultures, the women are tapping into that feminine energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, the women of color, we struggling with that. And I said it the last
You want to
time.
be the man and the woman in
That's
the
it.
relationship.
And I said it the last time we were on the air, that a lot of it is by default, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we were placed in these positions where we had to assume the role of the provider and the nurturer, and we had to be in survival mode. We had to be in mode. We had to be in nurturer mode. We had to be intuitive. We had to do it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, we have to say, this, maybe I had to do that, but there's some parts of that stuff that I wasn't supposed to have to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're raising children, you're not supposed to be. It wasn't designed for you to be in that alone and for you to have to do all of that alone. The women in other cultures, they're winning because where we saying no, I'm not submitting to no man. I'm not. And guess what they're saying? Poppy, you want me to fix your plate, Poppy? Let me go get your slippers, Poppy. What you want me to do, Poppy? They saying, okay, I'm gonna let you be the husband.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The white women, they're winning our men because they're saying, what do you need? You need me to help you get your business together? You need me to help? What do you need? You need to get your credit in order? What do you need? They're helping them. We're the ones, and then we're screaming that they're taking our men to do an assessment and say, this is where we are and this is what we need to fix.
Well, I think what you just said raises two issues. One, trust.
Mm-hmm.
Black women have lost trust,
Mm-hmm.
have lost faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the other issue is, if you have been the bread maker, mama, daddy, and played all those roles, when you meet somebody, how difficult is it to relinquish some degree of control,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because look, this is my house, right? I had this house when I met you. Okay. This is my car. I had this car when I met you, right? I'm used to living here by myself, doing what I want to do when I want to do it. And now you're here. So now, under this roof, right? I've always been in charge, right? How willing are you to say, okay, I'm going to release some of that control? That's a tough one.
I think that when he comes to the table, and he comes to the table with the pure heart, and he comes to the table with a mindset that he's going to help you heal the hurts, because the trust is not there because you're hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trust is not there because you're hurt and you didn't take the time to heal. The trust is not there because you're hurt, you didn't take the time to heal, and you probably didn't go to therapy, right?
Right.
So you didn't do anything that you needed to do to get to a healthy place. Okay, so we're still going to give you that. Maybe you're not there. But if his heart is pure and his objective is to help her heal, then he's going to be able to identify that she had all this stuff before he came around.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's holding on to control out of fear, right? Because she's afraid that if she relinquishes control, that he's going to quote unquote make a sucker, right?
Uh-huh.
So she's holding on for to have some control. He has to speak to that fear. And it's not by force, it's by actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are exuding that masculine energy, you don't have a choice. She's going to submit to that. There's no choice. You can't have somebody that's there with all this masculine energy. He's the survivor, he's the protector, he's and she's not going to submit. We were created to do that.
But you make it sound so simple.
It is simple.
They push back all the time.
Oh, it's not
It
that
is simple.
Too much
I'm good.
pushback.
I think that you guys say it's pushback, but in this pushback, are you guys assessing yourself and saying, am I doing my part?
Well, you know what? I think that yes, men have assessment as well, self-assessment.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But again, you have these women coming into this relationship who are taught by their mother, don't give him too much of yourself.
Mm.
Make sure you keep your bank account separate from his bank account, right? So I can remember about 25 years ago, I went to my friend's wedding. And before the ceremony started, the preacher said, listen, they used to tell you that marriage is 50-50. You put in 50, you put in 50, and you got 100%. He said, no. If you only putting in 50%, what you doing with that other 50%? The other 50% probably is not satisfying us out in the street, right? So this has to be 100% commitment, right? So when you tell people, hey, look, you can't hide money in a separate account, right? Who's willing to do that? Because again, you have trust issues, right? I've been burnt before by a guy that looks something like you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know something? We all have particular traits we look for. Physical traits we look for in a male or female, right? So the guy that I dated before, something like you, sounded something like you, right? So, God is up, right? And it's going to stay that way. It's just not going to come down, right? For Black women in this country, the only man that they immediately put their guard down for is Jesus. Other than that, it's a fight. It's a struggle. The struggle is real.
That whole bank account thing,
Mhm.
women have been that's not cultural. Women do that across the board.
Sure.
But I think that if one of my sons came to me and said, if Chris came to me and said, this is what I found out my wife has this account or whatever, I would say to him, if you have an issue with the account, how about to build trust with her? You say, you don't need to do this on the side. Because I get it, right? I get it. I get it that you were forced into this protective role by default, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, this is what you were presented with. So I get that. So you don't have to do that on the side. How about you're going to have this account and we're going to both put a couple dollars into that account for you, and that's your account. What are you saying to your wife then? What are you saying to this is healing. This is the stuff I'm talking about, where he has to speak to the hurts. He has to do that. That's the only way we're going to start to heal.
I would ask directly, why do you have this account?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I know in the back of the mind, right, it is, I guess, a fear of abandonment, right? That I'm going to be left out here without a roof over my head, right? That I'm going to have to maybe live in a shelter, live on the street. I can't put my
Mm-hmm.
right. And at the same time, can I place full trust in this individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even though you may have been with someone for 10, 20 years, in the back of your mind, there's always that voice that was mama's voice, that was grandma's voice, that you respected,
Mm-hmm.
telling you based on their experience, what they went through, what they endured 50, 60, 70 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a different time then. During that time, women didn't have a voice. What the man said went, period.
But what about the women who have those accounts who didn't get that word of advice from the mother and the grandmother, but instead the mother abandoned them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And the grandmother abandoned the mother, and then the mother abandoned her, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then she got with a couple of men that abandoned her.
Right.
So maybe it has nothing to do with the nugget that was passed down from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's really built on hurt and abandonment, right? Which is what we with tonight, saying, the toxicity that we grow up with, right? So we have to start to like dismantle that. But the person that's the most responsible after the parents is the man,
Mm-hmm.
the mate.
Mm-hmm.
He's the next one in line that's the most responsible for cultivating this woman. Unfortunately, by default, the brothers maybe haven't done what they're supposed to do, some of them. You won't say all of them. And now the good brothers like you or like Terry, right? You're challenged to have to practice damage control and try to speak to these multiple. Because I want you to know, these are not women with one layer of trauma. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is layer on top of layer on top of layer of trauma. The challenge to have to speak to in an effort to heal them. And it's work.
Too much work.
I don't say it's too much work, because if we say it's too much work, then we giving up on us.
Well, the reason why I say that, we go the extra mile. Trust me. We want to give our women the opportunity, but after a while, when you come home from work and you're already beaten up by society, the last thing you want to do is come home and fight with your lady.
That's true too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We have no, because we both have been traumatized. You know what I mean? But these women have to get to a point where they have to stop listening to respond and just listen.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because in all that they have been through, all the luggage, the bad relationships, the bad kids, everything else, all they want to do is bump their gums, hand on their hip, finger in their face. Just like if you see those TV commercials that show black women, they got this attitude, the head bob, and this, that, and I don't know black women like that. But it's too many for the entertainment industry and media to present that picture. That's what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're getting that from.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to deal with that.
But we have to start somewhere, guys.
You're right.
We did.
We
do went down the block.
Right. Well, okay. We do need to do the work, right? But for a young woman, right, who is traumatized, what's the first step in her recovery?
Self-introspection.
Mm-hmm.
Identifying that maybe I need help. Maybe life has kicked my butt so much that I need a minute to regroup and I need somebody to show me how to get up, right? And there's a model in practice for women with trauma: find it, face it, feel it, forgive it, and then forge ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but it starts at the place of finding it, which is just that moment of self-introspection where you say, you know what, I need to acknowledge that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I need to acknowledge that I've been through 4 relationships that have ended in him beating me in my head. I need to acknowledge and accept the fact that I played a part in choosing, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a cycle of poor choices with men, right? So obviously, and I've heard people say this, oh, you don't want me to choose them because I don't do good at choosing. Then you know what you need to do? Maybe don't choose.
Right.
For now, sit and maybe just get a clear picture of what should be. And maybe what should be for me is not what should be for you, but maybe somewhere in the middle.
Right.
But we have to have something to, like I said, in reference to my dad, to say we want to emulate.
Right. Right.
And you guys gotta, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, but fix this a little bit, heal this a little bit. You guys are going to be the ones that's going to be challenged, to deal with these broken women. But prayerfully, right, if we do the work collectively, that we'll arrive maybe in another generation or so where we won't have such broken women. But men have to take accountability too.
Well, absolutely. And when you say us guys have to, I guess, step up, right? Yeah, because the other brothers ain't. And you have to keep in mind, right? Brothers who are broken, right? The type that's going to sit down and have an introspective conversation with themselves or somebody else, right? A wounded animal you never go near because that animal, is unpredictable. And a lot of times with our brothers, it's the same thing. You try to go to them, right? They feel challenged. They're going to attack because that's all they know, because that's what was done to them, right? When you challenge daddy, daddy knocked you out. When you challenge mama, mama told daddy knock you out, or mama knocked you out, right? So all you understand is to react with violence when you are challenged emotionally, spiritually, or mentally, right? Physically, brothers come out of jail, they've been pumping iron for 10 years. They ain't worried about you running up on them physically. It is the emotional attack, the spiritual attack, right? That's the problem. So all they know, right, well, I had to defend myself, and I used my fist. So now when you come at me, right, all I know is to revert to the knuckle game. So, I guess brothers who have an understanding are only ones who are going to be able to have those conversations. And, I was talking to somebody today, right, briefly. And, when you talk about layers and layers of trauma, right, you're right. There are some sisters that have just layers and layers of trauma. And the problem is, it starts in their youth. And mama ignored it, didn't get you the help you needed. Then you went through adolescence and you had some trauma there. And then when you became an adult, more trauma. So now you got, you're 45 years old and you got 49 years of trauma.
You have 49 years of trauma and a mother who also had layer upon layer of trauma. And so not only did she not get you the help that you may have needed, she couldn't even speak to the trauma. She couldn't even help you work through the trauma. And people don't realize what an impact that has on a kid. We laugh in my family because my sons always, they say to me, I don't want to talk to the therapist.
Right.
Like, can I talk to my mother? Because I don't want to talk to the therapist. And so what I can say is that even though they remind me they don't want to talk to the therapist, What I know is that I'm still helping them if I see something.
Right.
If I see something, we have sessions sometimes that they don't even know they participated in, right? But not every to that,
Right.
right? My mom wasn't a therapist. Your mom wasn't a therapist.
Not at all.
So if we have mothers that are raising these daughters and they've been through multiple instances of traumatic events themselves, you don't even identify that your poor child is traumatized.
Or you deny it.
Yes.
You know, because there's some women who knew what was going on,
Mhm.
right? The boyfriend, the
Mhm.
husband, right? You knew and you denied it, or you blamed the
The
child.
child. Mhm.
You know? Would that qualify as the man who is the source of the trauma, or is it the woman in that case?
That would be identified as an entire broken family system. That whole system is broken.
That's true.
So again, it has us go all the way back around the mulberry bush to arrive back at that same spot where it's going to take somebody like you and somebody like me and somebody like Terry to say, I'm just going to really be dedicated to help us come up.
Mhm.
Because if not, we're not going in a good direction.
Right.
So we have to be committed to the cause.
All right. I'm going to kind of end with this. It seems that women, when it comes to certain subjects, really don't want to talk to men, right? You know, I find that if I want to know something about a woman, why would I ask a man?
Mm.
How does he know?
Mm.
If you want to know something, but you find women get together and they talk about particular subjects, a lot of times relationships, but you don't include men in that cipher, right?
You better go ahead. That's right.
So, you know, here you are, you getting information from a man about a man from a woman. She's telling you her hurt, her pain, her history.
That's
right?
what like commiserating we do together.
Right.
Mhm.
You are not getting the information from a man, right? So women have these meetings, right? And they sit around and they talk about, well, my man this and my man that. Well, why does he do this and why does he do that? But the man isn't there to tell you the reason why.
Mhm.
So I think that what needs to happen is men and women need to sit down in groups, group therapy,
Mhm.
right? And talk about, this is why we have done this, right? You know, why do men, it always comes up, why do men cheat? That's one of the first questions that come up, right? Well, my answer always is, are men the only ones that cheat? Are we saying
No.
only one species cheats? But see, that is when you have this group of women, right? You don't focus on what you're doing, you focus on what he's doing or what he's done. So yeah, we need to do this group therapy.
And we need to be able to when we hear it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we hear those difficult things,
Right.
women,
Mm-hmm.
when we hear those difficult things that we really don't want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
we have to be willing to hear it. We have to be willing to hear it, and we have to be willing to say,
See, that's where the God's got to come down.
but it will if we start to do it collectively. Like when you said we need group counseling, the first thing that popped into my spirit was like town halls. You know, like when do we as a culture take it and say, you know what, we need to start having these town halls, right, where we are gathering collectively, right, to
Mhm.
feed one another's spirit,
Mhm.
right, to teach one another, to listen to one another. Because guess what? If we say, why do men cheat? Don't ask me why a man cheats.
Right.
Just ask him why he's cheating.
Right.
And if a woman is more masculine than her brother, ask the woman, why are you so hard?
Mhm.
You know, but so we need to have those difficult discussions, but we need to figure out, how do we start to gather collectively? What's the plan?
Well, that, you know, a multi-layered or multifaceted problem requires a multi-layered and multifaceted answer.
Mm.
And, you know, One way is through talking on air, right? I mean, realistically, there may be, if it's just one person, one man who heard tonight's conversation and began to do a little self-introspection.
Mhm.
And, you might be in one room and your spouse or, significant others in the other room, but you heard something tonight that stirred you to go in that room and sit down with them, look them in the eye and say, you know what? I heard something tonight and it made me think of you. And it gave me hope that we can fix this situation.
Mhm.
Because you know something, we're not in this alone. There's a lot of people going through the same thing that we're going through. And a lot of times with us, and I'm talking about, and you know what, with people in general, one of the big problems is communication, right? In America, we always want to talk about the good stuff. We don't want to get down to the nitty gritty, right? And it's down deep is where the root of the problem is. We pull out the weed, but we leave the root in, right? And that weed is going to grow back. So we need to get down to what they say back in the day, the nitty gritty, right? Get down to that root and pull the root out. And then you have new fertile land, new fertile soil, right, to produce. So, I'm glad I have a co-host now. I really am.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad you are, right? Because you know what? Me and Terry will sit here, right? And, we'll go back and forth. We have that masculine energy, right? And, nothing balances the situation out like
balance.
The feminine energy, right? And, a lot of guys in denial. No, we all have feminine energy in us, right? And women have the masculine energy. The idea is to balance it out, right? Not too much so that you walking around here, a young man with a skirt on. You want to accept yourself for who you are. You're created to be a man, right? And yes, that feminine energy gives you certain insights, right? Spiritual contact, right? Emotions, things like that are found in your feminine energy. But in our society, feminine energy, right? And now we're rejecting the masculine energy because now they call it toxic masculinity. I don't really know what that is.
Well, we don't have a lot of time left. That's a great place for us to pick up. But what I will say is your masculine energy, my female energy is going to bring balance because that's the way it was supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Right. So collectively, we're going to get the job done.
So what we're saying is next we're going to talk about this whole concept of toxic masculinity. Try to identify what it is.
Sure.
Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. TP, you going to join us next week?
I'll be here. Man.
All right, we're going to talk about masculinity. We're going to find out if such a thing. Is that really a thing, right? Because all I know is my father was my example of manhood. And I didn't grow up looking toward rappers and singers. For us, it was Dr. King. It was Malcolm X, right? It was the Panthers. Those were, for my generation, that was our example of manhood, right? So now you're telling me that's toxic? We need to talk about that.
I guess that's where we're going to pick up next
That's
week.
where we're going to go. So, folks, I hope you got something out of our conversation today. And again, I want to welcome to the Gynesis family, Roman A. It is a pleasure to have you with the feminine energy. And we're going to explore this topic again next week. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Grace and peace.